Hello and welcome to this edition of Ritter's Rant. Today we're going to talk about freedom, liberty, security. Benjamin Franklin famously said, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. This quote comes in the context of ongoing actions on the part of the Trump administration to deploy not only significant national level law enforcement into select cities across the United States, but also to federalize the National Guard, send armed soldiers into the streets of American cities, and to discuss the potential of deploying active duty troops, Marines, soldiers, into American cities. Now, let there be no doubt, America's urban environment is becoming increasingly unlawful, chaotic, unruly, unlivable. My daughter lives in Washington, D.C., and I am not happy about the fact that, she is literally putting her life at risk every time she steps out of her apartment onto the streets, because you don't know when the latest drug deal gone bad is going to go south and gunfire is going to break out. You don't know when the next drug addict in desperate need of money to buy substances that will alleviate his or her suffering will pick my daughter or her husband or their friends to be the victim. It's an epidemic of crime. There's no doubt about this, and something needs to be done. But we live in a constitutional republic that has rejected the idea of, soldiers patrolling our streets. There are laws prohibiting this. There is precedent. Why do you think we have a Third Amendment? The Third Amendment exists to prevent, soldiers from being billeted in our quarters. Why? Because we don't want soldiers in our lives. We don't want to be occupied. That's not what America is about. There's got to be a better way to solve the epidemic of crime other than sacrificing the very values, the standards, the norms that define who we are collectively as a people. Are we willing to sacrifice liberty for security, a temporary whiff of security? Because this is not sustainable. This is not sustainable at all, unless, of course, we want America to become a nation occupied by its own military. I grew up in a time and age where we viewed governments that had to put soldiers in the streets to maintain law and order as dictatorships, the antithesis of democracy. We opposed these kind of governments, and yet here we are, becoming one ourselves. Is this truly the America that we want to live in? Maybe if we spent less money funding Ukrainian Nazis and more money funding domestic law enforcement, increasing the quality of the officers we put in the streets, the numbers of the officers. We give them the tools necessary to deal with these epidemics, not just the tools of force, but I'm talking about surveillance tools within the framework of law. I'm talking about analytical tools. I'm talking about the backup they need. How do we deal with the root causes of much of the crime that's being confronted? We declare war on crime, but we're not winning that war. So war probably isn't the answer. Maybe it's time we delve deeper into why crime occurs and then dedicate the resources that would be needed to solve these issues. So we didn't need to have, military vehicles patrolling the streets. And now there's another aspect of this too that's quite disturbing. I know that President Trump and his supporters, when confronted by the fact that the cities that are being targeted tend to be bastions of democratic political power. He says, well, that's because the Democrats don't know how to control crime. Maybe. But this looks an awful lot like Republican militarized occupation of democratic political strongholds for political purposes. This looks an awful lot like President Trump is federalizing the military, sending them into the strongholds of his political opposition in order to diminish the political power of his opposition. That's not how we work, guys. That's not what this country's about. This is not what the men and women who serve in our armed forces raised their hand and swore an oath to. They swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. They are there to protect the American people from enemies, foreign and domestic. But domestic enemies, aren't common criminals. That's not what the military was created to confront. We have law enforcement to do this. We need to do a better job of enforcing the laws we have and not take shortcuts, no matter how much we can justify them based upon crime statistics. Don't take shortcuts that cause us to basically rip up the very document that these soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marine swore an oath to uphold and defend with their lives. We need to do better. Liberty is everything. Security, it's nice, but if we're willing to sacrifice liberty to have security, we no longer are the United States of America. As an American, that's a country I simply don't want to live in. Anyways, that's my rant. Next time a thought crosses my mind, I'll be sure to let you know. Thanks.